The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday evening. I looked down at my phone and saw the family group chat lighting up. Dad, maybe after everything, it's best Sloan takes a step back. We all agree, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Then reactions started appearing. Thumbs up, hearts, short comments. Tiny digital moments that somehow carried the weight of years. I stared at the screen. Funny how a lifetime of effort can sometimes be summarized in a few sentences. I had spent years helping hold our family together behind the scenes. I organized, planned, solved problems nobody wanted to deal with, and kept things moving while everyone else stood in the spotlight. I wasn't asking for applause. I wasn't asking for credit. I just thought I belonged. I waited for a moment before responding. Then I typed, "Understood." I sent it, closed the app, turned off notifications. My name is Sloan, and if this sounds like a story about rejection, it isn't. It's a story about what happened after I finally stopped begging for a seat at someone else's table. Because sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is walk away from people you spent your whole life trying to make proud. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. No TV, no music, just silence. And silence has a strange way of making things clear. For years, I had measured my worth by usefulness. If I fixed problems, I mattered. If I carried the weight, I belonged. If I sacrificed enough, eventually someone would notice. But sitting there in the quiet, I realized something. I had spent so much time helping everyone else build their lives. I had forgotten to build my own. That realization hurt. Not because I hated them, because I loved them. And love mixed with disappointment feels heavy. Really heavy. Over the next few weeks, I pulled back. No dramatic speeches, no emotional social media posts, no angry phone calls. I simply stepped away. For the first time in years, I had mornings without obligations. No emergency calls, no expectations, no pressure. At first, it felt wrong. Then it felt peaceful. Then it felt powerful. People started noticing. My phone would buzz. "Hey Sloan, are you coming to the meeting? Can you review this? Can you help with that?" And for the first time, I started answering differently. I can't. Simple, polite, final. I used to think boundaries were walls. Turns out they're doors. You just finally decide who gets a key. Months passed. Slowly, I began rebuilding pieces of myself I'd forgotten existed. I started reading again, writing again, thinking again, not for someone else's goals, for mine. I remembered ideas I'd buried years earlier because they didn't seem practical. Dreams I had put on hold. Projects I'd convinced myself could wait. And one idea stayed in my head. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I had met so many women over the years who had experienced something similar. People overlooked in families. People told to stay quiet. People expected to support everyone else's dreams while setting their own aside. Brilliant people, strong people, invisible people. I kept thinking, what if they just needed someone to remind them they weren't invisible? So I started small, really small. One meeting, then another, coffee shops, phone calls, late night conversations, no cameras, no audience, just people sharing stories, stories about starting over, stories about feeling unseen, stories about finally choosing themselves. I named it Forge because that's what it felt like, not breaking, becoming. The funny thing about building something meaningful is that people feel it. Word spread, slowly at first, then all at once. Months later, Forge wasn't just an idea anymore. It was real. Women were launching businesses, paying off debt, returning to school, starting fresh, building futures they once thought belonged to someone else. Every success story felt like proof. Proof that being overlooked doesn't make you unimportant. Sometimes it just means you're standing in the wrong room. People began reaching out, podcasts, journalists, interviews. Most of them asked the same question. Did your family situation motivate you? I always smiled, because they expected anger, they expected resentment, they expected me to tell some dramatic story about proving people wrong. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was simpler. I wasn't trying to defeat anyone. I was trying to find myself. There's a difference. One afternoon, I received an old photograph. Someone had sent it anonymously. It was from a family event years earlier. Everyone was gathered together smiling for the camera. I almost deleted it. Then I noticed something. Me, standing near the edge, holding coats, smiling politely, looking grateful just to be included. I stared at it for a long time. Not because it made me sad, because I barely recognized her. That version of me believed acceptance had to be earned, believed love meant sacrifice, believed disappearing for other people was the same thing as caring. She had no idea who she'd become. Months turned into a year. Forge kept growing. Then came our first annual event. Nothing fancy, no giant chandeliers, no luxury venue, just a room full of women who had rebuilt themselves, single mothers, entrepreneurs, dreamers, people who had spent years shrinking themselves for others. Now they were standing taller. I walked onto the stage holding a few handwritten notes. Then I looked out at the audience, hundreds of faces, waiting, listening. I smiled. I used to think success meant finally being invited into the room, I said. The room went quiet. I used to think if I worked hard enough, helped enough, sacrificed enough, eventually someone would hand me a seat. I paused. But life taught me something better. I looked around. They didn't realize. I laughed softly. I could build my own table. The room erupted. People laughed, some cried, some stood. And for a moment, I just stood there, taking it all in. Not because I felt important, because I felt free. Later that night, I walked home alone. No cameras, no spotlight, no noise, just me. At my apartment door, there was a letter waiting, no return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Dad. I sat down before opening it. Inside were only a few lines. We thought we were protecting what mattered. We didn't realize what we were losing. I hope you're happy. That was it. No guilt, no argument, no expectations. I read it twice, folded it carefully, and tucked it into a book. Not because it fixed everything, because not every story ends with perfect closure. Some end with understanding, and that's enough. Today, people sometimes ask if I regret stepping away. I don't, because I didn't lose myself when I left. I found myself. I learned that walking away isn't always giving up. Sometimes it's finally moving forward. Sometimes choosing yourself isn't selfish. Sometimes silence becomes strength. And sometimes the person everyone underestimated becomes the one who finally understands their own value. They told me to step away, so I did. And I discovered something beautiful waiting on the other side. Me.